Black women. Gaslighting is the great accomplice of oppression in the workplace. It's like the smooth criminal. It often sounds like, oh, am I just being sensitive? Am I just thinking that was rude? Am I just thinking that was racist? Maybe I'm just trying to look into something that's not really there. It sounds like it's really me.
Racial trauma in the workplace is real, and Mercedes Swan is using her HR background to help Black women find their bliss again. While HR protects the company from legal liability, Mercedes advocates pivoting and strategically picking a job that values you, because your choice is a matter of life or death.
How did you end up getting to the place where you were unhappy in your former position and you thought there's got to be more to life than this because you weren't happy, right?
It's been a little bit of a journey for me, I guess. So I've actually gone through cycles where I've been very excited, very happy, absolutely love what I did each day at work. And I say that because I think it's important to know that my baseline was actually being really happy at work. And so when I would be in those cycles of being like, oh, actually, I gotta go, I'm not enjoying this, time to leave. It was, I wasn't necessarily chasing something that I hadn't experienced before, right? It wasn't like hoping that it was just gonna happen. I was like, I know what this feels like to be valued. I know what it feels like to love what I do, excited to show up to work each day. My story, my story that I tell all the time is I had a sales professional that I work with, and he came up to me on my last day, in the role that I was in. I was in human resources. That's been kind of the start of my career. And he looked at me, he was like, oh my gosh, Mercedes, it's so good to see you smile again. I was like, yeah, I used to smile all the time before I was dealing with all this.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's been my story of like going through these journeys. But I guess I would say, if I really thought about it, I think it's been the easiest way to say is people not seeing you. And whether that's not seeing you because they don't value you, or seeing you because they don't respect your opinion, or not seeing you because they don't see you as a human, as somebody that they need to respect. There's a lot of different ways that Black women aren't seen in the workplace, but I would say that's always been typically the catalyst for me exiting, of just not being safe and seen.
You said something that was really, really important that I think people don't recognize, is that when you've been valued and you have loved what you do, you've loved your career, they value what you say, they value your input, they value your collaborative spirit. When you know that, you truly know when it's not that. And I think people were, for me in my situation, they were like, well, what do you mean you're not happy? And I'm like, I know what a good workplace is because I've worked in a good workplace before. I've had great relationships with people. This is different. This is different. What I think is interesting about you is that you are an HR professional. You are certified. And so many people are going to HR, and I apologize. Please forgive me, because I tell people all the time, I say HR is not your friend. I was very naive in believing that going to HR was a safe place to go, and that my issues were going to be handled with care and with responsibility, and for there to be accountability. And are we all naive in believing that that's the case? Why is it that HR is getting such a bad rap, that you are really there to protect the company and you're not there to protect the employee? Is that true? Because that's what I believe.
It has asterisk, right? It was because and I say it's an asterisk because I recognize that, like, my reasoning to get into human resources, because I wanted to create a workplace that was better for people. That has always been my driving motivator to be in human resources. It informed my decision to become the career love coach. It informed my decision to move in diversity, equity, inclusion. And so I have to say, when I'm talking to people who had that traumatic experience, because I know it is, that yeah, sometimes HR is not your friend. Sometimes HR is not the best of us, right? And doesn't stand up for Black women. And I unfortunately will say it is most of the time, right? And I think it's because that bias and discrimination is so normalized in our culture and our practices and our procedures that it's almost hard for you to not experience that. I have to be always transparent about my profession and say that, right? I think one of the things that's so important and why it happens so much is that, yes, HR is there to protect the company, but if HR is doing the right thing, that means protecting employees, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm not protecting employees from discrimination, from harassment, from hostile supervisors, from poor workplace practices that just mean you don't even want to be there, and employees leave and employees have a suit and employees are filing complaints or grievances or in a unionized environment, right? We have disagreements with the union, right? That all keeps us back from moving forward, whether you think of that from the leadership or you think of that from human resources or the individual employee. And so really HR, if we said that was truly our guiding light, we would show up for employees the way that we should, right? We would show up and advocate for them. And I think that's been true for my career, right? I wasn't always on the same page with all employees. They didn't always like me, but I knew at the end of the day, I was fighting for what I felt like was the equitable and the right thing to do in the workplace. One of my favorite HR professionals who I really have always admired um, her resolve and how she viewed human resources is she said, at the end of the day, no matter what our decision is, no matter what we do, because there are hard decisions that HR professionals have to make, am I keeping a person whole as I can possibly keep them at the end of the day? And that's always something that will stick with me. Um, and it guides me, even though she was a little bit, later on in my career, not quite at the start, but it's something that is, I think, true about how human resources professionals should operate. And often the issues that we have with HR is because we don't know the process. And HR professionals should be telling us a process to go through, right? If I have discrimination, here's the right way to go about it. Here's how to share information with me that can help me help you, to help you understand what's going on, how to protect yourself. And often we don't have HR professionals that take time to share that. And then as a result, employees are on the other side of that, not understanding how to navigate it or to actually receive the protections that they have legally, right? I was like, oh, I just didn't show up to work because I had a sick mother, right? Okay, well, now you have attendance issues, but I have a sick mother. It's like, okay, but we didn't get your paperwork and we didn't know this was happening, right? And it's a two-way street there where HR professionals can do a much better job at communicating what the process is and how to help people protect their jobs and be safe. So that's a problem with the field, but we also have to we need education on the other side too, which is not really the job seeker or the employees element of that. It's not all their fault, but it's a dynamic when they come together. It's not pretty for Black women when that happens. Yeah.
And speaking of Black women, you have made a concerted and specific intentional effort to make sure that what you're doing is specifically for Black women, unapologetically for Black women. Not that you're not available for other folks, but you're like, I want to focus on the woman of color. I can tell you that I did not realize that what I was going through. I mean, we all know about discrimination and even obviously racism. And we have
Mhm.
learned, and I think people, especially people who do not look like us, don't understand that we know how to navigate these environments. We've had to do it all
Mhm.
of our lives. And yet, that's an extra burden that is placed on us
Mhm.
that they don't have to worry about. But when it comes to being a Black woman, I can tell you this, I had no idea that I thought it was just me. I really did. I thought I was
Yeah.
the only one in the world going through this kind of
Mhm.
devaluation of my soul and of my humanity. That's what it was. It
Yeah.
wasn't just a few moments here and there. It was persistent. It was perpetual. And we spend so much of our time navigating it that we're just holding it all in. And then
Yeah.
there's one day that something so small will be kind of like the final straw that breaks the camel's back, the dam that just
Mhm.
opens wide, and you just begin to say, enough is enough. That was me,
Yeah.
where I just said, you know what? I'm done. And
Done.
I walked away. I didn't have a golden parachute. I didn't have another job. I had nothing to go to. But I knew in my soul that it was not right for me to be there anymore, that I was not going to thrive, that I was literally going to die if I continued to stay. How do you shepherd women? Because I consider you to be a shepherd. How do you shepherd women
Oh.
to go from that place of I walked away or I need to walk away. And when I do, how do I fall back in love with my career? Because I can tell you, I love what I do, but I'm not doing what I did. And I've had to
Yeah.
reconcile my spirit with I'm not that same person. How do I re engage, do what I love to do, but in a different way that honors
Yeah.
me as a person?
I love that. And thank you. I know you probably do it all the time. Thank you for sharing the story and
Oh, yeah.
your challenges with that. I know you're absolutely not alone. It's something that happens to all of us. And we do all have that moment. We're like, wait a minute. Or we say, I say some people, I show up on your For You page. You're like, oh, that's not just me. And I was like, yeah, it's all
Mhm.
of us.
Hmm.
But in terms of the shepherding, I think it first starts, and I think many Black women have that before they sometimes get to me, but I think it first starts by saying, can I dream again? And like
Hmm.
giving yourself the opportunity to dream again. And that's why I talk about like falling in love with your career or falling back in love with your career because it's kind of dreamy, right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, falling in love is a little romantic, it's a little cute. And I mean, all that we deal with and also the challenges of the job search and building your confidence back up isn't all that cute, right? But I think the idea behind it of saying, I have this dream to fall in love with my career, to love what I do, is opening us up to a possibility, right? And I think that's where, in terms for me for coaching, I start, right? Because a lot of places, a lot of Black women, they'll come to me and they'll be like, okay, well, I've just been hopping from job to job. I've just done this and gone to whoever has hired me or whatever the available position was. And a lot of that stems from unemployment, underemployment, and toxic environments, right? That lead us to make these decisions. But at the end of the day, because we are just hopping, we've never really thought about what it is that we want and the dream. And so by me encouraging Black women to think more about the dream, it opens up the possibility of thinking, right, oh, well, maybe that career path that would be something that I love. And maybe that would better support my ideal life and how I dream about what I want to do and how I want to show up, who I want to be, the essence of, being her. And that's where I really start. Like, let's talk about the dream. Let's talk about where you want to go in your career. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, how are we going to build the confidence around that, right? So if you're saying, hey, I can't move into this job, I don't have the right skills. Well, let's talk about it. Do you really not have those skills? And most of the time we do have those skills, whether it's direct or transferable, but we can't see it because of all of the trauma, to your point, like of being devalued and kind of beat down and just feeling like we don't have the right skills, that we're not enough, because that's what that's what they want us to believe. It's absolutely a way to keep us in place and stagnant in our careers, right? It's not chance, it's intentional. And so by building that confidence around what it is that you want and your ability to do it helps to unlock other things. And then there's one other thing, of course, there's tactical pieces of the resume and interviewing and things like that are of course part of my offering and things that I do. But I also have this idea of setting job search standards. So I talk about this a lot. It's like people don't want to talk about it, but dating is kind of like job seeking. Like, you have to have standards, you have to have boundaries, you have to know what you're looking for. And then also, when you see those red flags, right, you have to be willing to walk away. And sometimes in the interview, we don't walk away and then we wonder why we've gone back through the cycle. And I've been there. I've ignored some red flags. That's, I'll see it and I'll say, that's how I got there, right? Being clear, getting more clear about it, I think is so important. But falling in love, building
Mhm.
confidence, yeah, taking action. That's my approach.
I love that idea of falling in love with what you love to do, falling in love with your passion. There's some people, some women who will say, "Well, I have a passion for whatever it is, but it's
Mhm.
not going to pay the bills. I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got kids I'm putting into college. How do I marry my passion with the purpose of also being financially stable?" That's very difficult to
Mhm.
do. So sometimes, do we have to take that position that doesn't maybe pay as much, but at least it might give us the time to follow the passion and do the two at the
Mhm.
same time? How do we bridge that gap?
A lot of times, and I'm not saying that's always true, right? I think there are absolutely some fields that it's harder to find the pay that you need while doing what you do. I often find that Black women will get on my phone, they'll get on my phone and they'll tell me that, and they have not looked for the job. They
Mhm.
will go out there, they'll be like, I know I want to do this. Let's just say, like for me, right? I moved into diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Oh, well, D&I practitioners are not valued in this market. They're not paying us. They're going to lay us off, blah, 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 blah. Even when I was moving into DEI as a full-time role, I was in a state where all of that was being legally dismantled. I live in Florida.
Mhm.
I worked in higher education, so I was directly impacted by a lot of those laws and legislation. I still went for it. And I feel like I was well paid. I feel like I got to do work that I do. And was it the most, was it the six-figure girlies, tech girlies? No, but I love what I did. And I feel like it allowed me to have the lifestyle that I wanted. It was fully remote. I got a great paycheck for what I was doing. I got to travel. I got to teach what I love. And I think that's a more comprehensive, holistic way to look at it, right? But if I had let all of whether they're my beliefs or the beliefs of the world, right, tell me what was possible for a D&I career or the field that I wanted, I would have never gone to apply to those types of jobs. Or if I would have let my other toxic experiences, keep me back from the passion, I might not have done it. And so I think my thoughts and my like the question that I want to ask of that is like, is that really true? Is it really
Mhm.
true that you can't be paid for what you want to do? Even if we say things that are like artists, right? I have clients who are in the creative space all the time, and it's like, oh, you do that for work? That is so cool, and you're well paid. Oh my gosh. And it's like we have to find the evidence, right, to prove that what we want to do is really possible. I was I was on TikTok the other day. There is a man out there that he puts Legos together of artists and he has millions of followers. And I'm not saying that he didn't have to grow and develop, but I'm
Mhm.
sure that man with his millions of followers is well paid. I'm not saying it's not a journey and, it doesn't take you building a skill to get there, but it's like people are being paid for really weird things.
And apparently that's his passion, right?
And it is. I hope it is because he does. That had to take him hours and hours. Okay, I was looking at that. I was like, that does look like Kendrick Lamar,
Like, and you're pretty good at what your passion
and
is
he's
too as
pretty
well.
good. And I can't imagine how much he's being paid for that
Oh
based on
my
the
God.
likes and views. I was like, oh my gosh. So giving ourselves permission to look at the maybe even the most interesting, weird way to
Yeah.
make money, and like, if that's possible, you know what? So is my dream.